Britain's energy market is now entering a strange and dangerous paradox where official prices are falling, but the actual burden on the economy is reaching a breaking point. Recently, the National Energy Regulator announced a 7% reduction in the household price cap, creating a brief moment of hope that the worst of the crisis had finally passed. However, this statistical decline is not reaching the real world, as households across the United Kingdom still face energy bills that remain 40% higher than pre-crisis levels. The impact of this persistent pressure is moving far beyond individual homes and is now threatening the very foundation of the British industrial sector. As energy costs stay structurally high, major manufacturing plants are reducing their shifts or halting production entirely to avoid staggering operational losses. This crisis is significant because it reveals a systemic failure in the energy infrastructure of the world's sixth largest economy, and the consequences are spreading through global supply chains. For international investors and partner nations, the instability in British energy isn't just a local issue. It represents a new kind of risk that could affect trade and industrial output across Europe and the Atlantic. Recent reports from the Confederation of British Industry confirm that nearly 40% of manufacturers are considering cutting investment or moving operations abroad due to these unmanageable costs. These are not merely temporary adjustments. They are clear signs of a deeper structural trap that continues to drain the nation's economic strength. While government officials point to the falling price cap as a sign of recovery, the data from the ground shows a starkly different reality where the cost of living continues to rise. This gap between official statistics and the lived experience of millions is why many analysts now fear the UK energy system is drifting out of control. But to truly understand why this paradox exists today, we must look beyond the current numbers and examine the energy blueprint of Britain that has been building for over 100 years. That historical blueprint began in the era of the Industrial Revolution, when Britain sat at the center of the world as a superpower fueled by its own vast reserves of coal. For more than a century, cheap and abundant domestic coal powered the British Empire, providing a level of energy independence that allowed its industries to dominate global markets without fear of external supply shocks. However, as the world moved toward the late 20th century, Britain made a series of strategic choices to transition away from the heavy pollution of coal in favor of cleaner and more efficient energy sources. At that time, the discovery of massive natural gas fields in the North Sea seemed like a divine gift, promising a new era of prosperity where the nation could maintain its independence while embracing a modern energy profile. As the country rapidly decommissioned its coal mines and replaced them with gas-fired power plants, Britain became one of the most gas-dependent economies in the developed world. This transition was initially hailed as a brilliant success, as it lowered domestic emissions and provided relatively low-cost energy for decades while the North Sea production remained at its peak. But this success created a dangerous complacency, as the nation slowly allowed its domestic gas production to decline while failing to build sufficient long-term storage facilities. The result was a structural trap where a once self-sufficient empire became increasingly reliant on international pipelines and the volatile global spot market for its daily survival. By moving so aggressively into natural gas without a backup plan, Britain traded its stable but dirty coal heritage for a clean but dangerously fragile dependence on global market prices. This shift meant that even a minor disruption in global supply could now trigger a massive economic shock that the government had little power to contain. The blessing of abundant resources had slowly transformed into a poisoned chalice, and to make matters worse, a few years ago, an unexpected and massive storm began to overwhelm the United Kingdom. This crisis first started to accelerate in 2021, when a sudden surge in global demand for energy collided with an unexpected shortage of natural gas supplies across Europe. Because Britain had neglected its long-term storage infrastructure, the nation had no buffer to absorb the shock as international prices began to skyrocket at an uncontrollable pace. The situation turned from a market concern into a national emergency when the geopolitical tragedy of the war in Ukraine fractured the global energy landscape entirely. As the flow of gas became a weapon of war, the British energy market descended into a state of chaos that few had ever witnessed in modern times. Within a matter of months, Dozens of domestic energy suppliers were forced into bankruptcy because they could no longer afford the staggering costs of purchasing wholesale gas. For millions of ordinary citizens, this systemic collapse translated into a brutal reality where household energy bills nearly doubled in a single year. The government was forced to intervene with massive subsidies to prevent a total social breakdown. Yet the sense of security that had defined British life for decades was shattered. Families were suddenly forced to make impossible choices between heating their homes and putting food on the table as the inflation rate soared to historic highs. This period of intense volatility reminded the world that even the most advanced economies are dangerously fragile when their core energy systems are tied to a volatile global market. By the time the most violent fluctuations of the conflict began to subside, the immediate panic seemed to be over and wholesale prices appeared to be stabilizing. However, for the people of Britain, the most painful chapter of this crisis was actually just beginning to unfold. As the immediate shock of wholesale price spikes began to fade, a new and more permanent crisis emerged from within the nation's aging energy infrastructure. The fundamental problem today is no longer just the fluctuating cost of natural gas, but the staggering expense of maintaining a power grid that was designed for a different century. Billions of pounds are now required to modernize these outdated networks, and these massive investments are being passed directly to consumers through fixed charges on their monthly bills. This structural burden means that even when global energy prices drop, the actual amount paid by British citizens remains artificially trapped at a high level. To make matters worse, the ambitious transition toward renewable energy is adding another layer of significant cost as the nation struggles to balance new green technology with its old system. The impact of this high-cost environment is now devastating the industrial heart of the country, making British manufacturing some of the most expensive in the developed world. Recent industrial reports indicate that businesses in the United Kingdom now face electricity rates that are the highest among all G7 nations. This competitive disadvantage is forcing a shocking reality where nearly 40% of British manufacturers are preparing to cut their domestic investment or move their operations to other countries. As these companies leave, they take with them the jobs and tax revenues that the nation desperately needs to fund its recovery. The British energy system is now caught in a cycle where the cost of fixing the past is effectively destroying the potential for a prosperous future. In response to these challenges, government leaders are certainly not ignoring this deepening crisis, and they have introduced a series of bold and ambitious plans to reshape the nation's energy landscape. However, these grand visions of a new energy system are already demanding a new and painful level of sacrifice from a population that has reached its limit. So, what exactly is the nature of this new energy strategy that requires such a heavy cost? At the heart of this national strategy is the ambitious Clean Power 2030 project, a massive undertaking designed to completely decarbonize the British electricity grid within a few short years. In theory, this aggressive shift toward wind, solar, and nuclear power represents the only logical path toward long-term energy independence and protection from volatile global gas markets. Yet, as the government accelerates this transition, the sheer scale of the required investment is creating a profound economic dilemma for the present generation. To build the necessary wind farms and update the national grid, hundreds of billions of pounds must be spent, and a significant portion of these costs is being integrated into household energy bills right now. For a family struggling to pay for basic necessities, the promise of cheaper green energy in the next decade provides little comfort when their current electricity rate continues to climb to fund that future. This creates a deepening social divide, where the environmental necessity of the future is directly clashing with the economic survival of the people today. While policymakers argue that the cost of inaction would be far higher, the immediate burden is fueling public frustration and raising difficult questions about the fairness of the entire transition. The risk is that in the rush to secure a sustainable future, the government may inadvertently hollow out the domestic industry and middle class that are supposed to benefit from it. As social tensions rise and the economic costs continue to accumulate, even the most optimistic supporters of the plan are beginning to acknowledge the massive obstacles ahead. Even at this very moment, everyone is searching for a definitive way out of this trap, but the future of the United Kingdom remains hidden behind a thick and uncertain fog. So, what exactly lies ahead for the nation's energy future? As the nation stands at this critical crossroads, energy experts are divided on whether the current sacrifices will ultimately lead to a new era of prosperity or a permanent state of decline. One optimistic scenario suggests that if the massive investments in clean power and grid modernization succeed, Britain could eventually benefit from some of the most stable and low-cost energy in the developed world. In this vision, the early pain of high electricity rates is viewed as a necessary but temporary hurdle before achieving a fully independent and sustainable industrial base. However, a much darker possibility looms where the sheer scale of the debt required for this transition keeps British energy prices artificially high for decades to come. In such a future, the United Kingdom would struggle to remain competitive, trapped in a high-cost structure where skyrocketing energy bills eat away at business profits, leaving global investors with no choice but to leave. This environment would burden its citizens with a permanent luxury tax on basic energy while hollowing out the nation's industrial strength. The crisis unfolding in this island nation is not merely a local tragedy, but serves as a profound warning for every advanced economy attempting the same transition from the fossil fuel past. What we see in Britain today is a preview of the difficult choices and hidden costs that every modern society will likely face in the coming decade. The struggle for energy security is no longer just a technical challenge, but a fundamental test of whether a nation can protect its economic heart while building a new foundation for the future. Now, the world is watching to see if the once great empire can successfully reinvent itself, or if it will be swallowed by the very transition intended to save it. Will the United Kingdom find a way to emerge from this dark tunnel into the light? Or will this period of high costs and uncertainty become their new and permanent reality? What are your thoughts on Britain's path forward? And do you think your own nation is prepared for the storms that may lie ahead?